reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and discussing at intervals. And so far we've read up to Madhya Lila chapter 10, the Lord's return to Jagannath Puri. We're taking up where we left off at the break, which seems to be at text number 109. Everyone good out there? Okay. After taking permission from his sannyas guru, Swarup Damodar went to Nilachala and accepted the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then, all day and night, in ecstatic love of Krishna, he enjoyed transcendental mellows in the loving service of the Lord. Swarup Damodar was the limit of all learned scholarship, but he did not exchange words with anyone. He simply remained in a solitary place, and no one could understand where he was. Sri Swarup Damodar was the personification of ecstatic love. Fully cognizant of the transcendental mellows in relationship with Krishna, he directly represented Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his second expansion. If someone wrote a book or composed verses and songs and wanted to recite them before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar would first examine them and then correctly present them. Only then would Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agree to listen. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was never pleased to hear books or verses opposed to the conclusive statements of devotional service. The Lord did not like hearing rasa basa, the overlapping of transcendental mellows. Purport: Bhakti Siddhanta Viruddha refers to that which is against the principle of unity and diversity, philosophically known as achintya bhed abhed, simultaneous oneness and difference, whereas rasa bhasa is something that may appear to be a transcendental mellow, but actually is not. Those who are pure Vaishnavas should avoid both these things opposed to devotional service. The misconceptions practically parallel the Mayavad philosophy. If one indulges in Mayavad philosophy, he gradually falls down from the platform of devotional service. By overlapping mellows, rasa basa, one eventually becomes a prakrita sahaja and takes everything to be very easy. One may also become a member of the Baul community and gradually become attracted to material activities. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore advised us to avoid bhakti siddhanta viruddha and rasa basa. In this way, the devotee can remain pure and free from fall downs. Everyone should try to remain aloof from bhakti siddhanta viruddha and rasa basa. Text 114. It was the practice of Swarup Damodar Goswami to examine all literatures to find out whether their conclusions were correct. Only then would he allow them to be heard by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that if someone impedes the execution of devotional service, it should be understood to be impure. Pure devotees of the Lord do not accept impure principles. Impure devotees accept rasa basa or overlapping contradictory mellows and other principles opposed to the bhakti path. The followers of such impure principles are never accepted as pure devotees. There are many parties following the path of rasa basa, and the followers are sometimes adored by ordinary men. Those who adopt the conclusions of rasa basa and bhakti siddhanta viruddha are never accepted as devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Swarup Damodar Goswami never approved such followers as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, nor did he allow them even to meet the Supreme Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Swarup Damodar used to read the poems of Vidyapati and Chandidas and Jayadev Goswami's Sri Gita Govinda. He used to make Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very happy by singing these songs. Swarup Damodar was an expert musician as the Gandharvas, and in scriptural discussion he was like Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly gods. Therefore it is to be concluded that there was no great personality quite like Swarup Damodar. Purport: Swarup Damodar Goswami was very expert in music as well as the Vedic scriptures. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to call him Damodar because of his expert singing and musical skills. The name Damodar was given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and added to the name given by his sannyas guru. He was therefore known as Swarup Damodar, or Damodar Swarup. He compiled a book of music named Sangita Damodar. Where is that? Sri Swarup Damodar was very dear to Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu, and he was the life and soul of all the devotees, headed by Srivas Thakur. When Swarup Damodar came to Jagannath Puri, he fell flat before the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, offering obeisances and reciting a verse. Helondu nitakedaya vishadaya pronmiladamodaya shamyachchastra vivadaya rasadaya chitarpito madaya shashvad bhakti vinodaya samadaya madhurya maryadaya Shri Chaitanya dayani detavadaya bhuyaramando daya. O ocean of mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let there be an awakening of your auspicious mercy, which easily drives away all kinds of material lamentation by making everything pure and blissful. Indeed, your mercy awakens transcendental bliss and covers all material pleasures. By your auspicious mercy, quarrels and disagreements arising among different scriptures are vanquished. Your auspicious mercy pours forth transcendental mellows and thus causes the heart to jubilate. Your mercy, which is full of joy, always stimulates devotional service and glorifies conjugal love of God. May transcendental bliss be awakened within my heart by your causeless mercy. This important verse, Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka 8.10, specifically describes the Lord's causeless mercy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most magnanimous personality of Godhead, distributes his causeless mercy in three ways to the conditioned soul. Every living entity is morose in the material world because he is always in want. He undergoes a great struggle for existence and tries to minimize his miserable condition by squeezing the utmost pleasure out of this world. But the living entity is never successful in this endeavor. While in a miserable condition, a person sometimes seeks the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but this is very difficult for materialistic people to obtain. However, when one becomes Krishna conscious by the grace of the Lord, the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord expands, and in this way a materialist may gain freedom from his miseries. Actually, his mind is cleansed by his transcendental connection with the lotus feet of the Lord. At such a time, one is enlightened by the loving service of the Lord. There are many different kinds of scriptures, and by reading them, one often becomes puzzled. But when one receives the mercy of the Lord, his confusion is mitigated. Not only are scriptural disparities resolved, but a kind of transcendental bliss is awakened, and in this way one is fully satisfied. The transcendental loving service of the Lord constantly engages the conditioned soul in serving the Lord's lotus feet. Through such fortunate engagement, one's transcendental love for Krishna is increased. One's position is thus completely purified, and one is filled with transcendental bliss accompanied by the spirit soul's jubilation. Thus, the transcendental causeless mercy of Lord Krishna is manifested in the heart of the devotee. At such a time, material needs no longer exist. The lamentation that invariably accompanies material desires also vanishes. By the grace of the Lord, one is elevated to the transcendental position, and then the transcendental mellows of the spiritual world are manifested in him. One's devotional service then becomes firm, and one engages in the Lord's transcendental loving service with great determination. All these combine to fully awaken the devotee's heart with love of Krishna. In the beginning, a conditioned soul is bereft of Krishna consciousness and is always morose in his material activities. Later, by associating with a pure devotee, one becomes inquisitive to know the absolute truth. In this way, one begins to engage in the transcendental service of the Lord. Next, by the Lord's grace, all misconceptions are vanquished, and the heart is cleansed of all material dirt. It is only then that the pleasure of transcendental bliss is awakened. By the Lord's mercy, one is completely convinced of the value of devotional service. When one can see the pastimes of the Lord everywhere, he is firmly situated in transcendental bliss. Such a devotee is relieved of all kinds of material desires, and he preaches the glories of the Lord all over the world. These Krishna-conscious activities separate him from material activities and the desire for liberation, because at every step the devotee feels himself connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although such a devotee may sometimes be involved in household life, he is untouched by material existence due to his constant engagement in devotional service. Thus, everyone is advised to take shelter of devotional service to become happy and liberated. What did you think of the purport? Hare Hare. Text 120. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised Swarup Damodar to his feet and embraced him. They both became ecstatic in love and fell unconscious. After they had regained their patience, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to speak. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "I saw in a dream that you were coming, and so this is very auspicious. I have been like a blind man, but your coming here restores my vision." Swarup said, "My dear Lord, please excuse my offense. I gave up your company to go elsewhere, and that was my great mistake. My dear Lord, I do not possess even a trace of love for your lotus feet. If I did, how could I have gone to another country? I am therefore a most sinful man. I gave up your company, but you did not give me up. By your rope of mercy, you have bound me by the neck and brought me back again to your lotus feet." Swarup Damodar then worshipped the lotus feet of Nityananda Prabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu in turn embraced him in the ecstasy of love. After worshipping Nityananda Prabhu, Swarup Damodar met Jagannatha, Mukunda, Shankara, and Sarvabhauma, as was befitting. Swarup Damodar also offered his worshipful prayers at the lotus feet of Paramananda Puri, who in turn embraced him in ecstatic love. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then gave Swarup Damodar residence in a solitary place and ordered a servant to serve him with a supply of water and other necessities. The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat with all the devotees, headed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and they discussed the pastimes of Krishna. At that time, Govinda appeared on the scene, offered his respectful obeisances, and spoke submissively. Just think of it with such devotees in an Ishtagoshti, what kind of references they could bring and what kind of Krishna Katha was going on. I mean, different combinations would be sort of different mood, but I was thinking of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, how learned he was, and then when he became a devotee, what he could reference just from sitting there. "I am the servant of Vishvarapuri. My name is Govinda, and following the orders of my spiritual master, I have come here. Just before his departure from this mortal world to attain the highest perfection, Ishvarapuri told me that I should go to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and render service unto him. Kashishvara will also come here after visiting all the holy places. However, following the orders of my spiritual master, I have hastily come to be present at your lotus feet." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "My spiritual master Ishvara Puri always favors me with parental affection. Therefore, out of his causeless mercy, he has sent you here." After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Why did Ishvara Puri keep a servant who comes from a Shudra family?" Purport: both Kashishvar and Govinda were personal servants of Ishvara Puri. After Ishvara Puri's demise, Kashishvar went to visit all the holy places of India. Following the orders of his spiritual master, Govinda immediately went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for shelter. Govinda came from a Shudra family, but because he was initiated by Ishvara Puri, he was certainly a Brahmana. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya here asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu why Ishvara Puri accepted a disciple from a Shudra family. According to the Smriti Shastra, which gives directions for the management of the Varnashram institution, a Brahmana cannot accept a disciple from the lower castes. In other words, a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra cannot be accepted as a servant. If a spiritual master accepts such a person, he is contaminated. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya therefore asked why Ishvara Puri accepted a servant or disciple born of a Shudra family. In answer to this question, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied that his spiritual master, Ishvara Puri, was so empowered that he was as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As such, Ishvara Puri was the spiritual master of the whole world. He was not a servant of any mundane rule or regulation. An empowered spiritual master like Ishvara Puri can bestow his mercy upon anyone, irrespective of caste or creed. The conclusion is that an empowered spiritual master is authorized by Krishna and his own guru, and should therefore be considered as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. That is the verdict of Vishwanath Chakravarti, Sakshad Daritvena. An authorized spiritual master is as good as Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Hari is free to act as he likes, the empowered spiritual master is also free. As Hari is not subject to mundane rules and regulations, the spiritual master, empowered by him, is also not subject. According to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 7.11, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tar Pravartana. An authorized spiritual master, empowered by Krishna, can spread the glories of the holy name of the Lord, for he has power of attorney from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the mundane world, anyone possessing his master's power of attorney can act on behalf of his master. Similarly, a spiritual master empowered by Krishna through his own bona fide spiritual master should be considered as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. That is the meaning of Sakshad Daritvena Samashtasashter. Sakshad Daritvena. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore describes the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the bona fide master as follows. My robot runs on water. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and my spiritual master, Ishvara Puri, are completely independent. Therefore, neither the mercy of my spiritual master nor that of Ishvara Puri is subject to any Vedic rules and regulations. The mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not restricted to the jurisdiction of caste and creed. Vidura was a Shudra, yet Krishna accepted lunch at his home. Lord Krishna's mercy is dependent only on affection. Being obliged only by affection, Lord Krishna acts very independently. Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is merciful. Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is merciful, but his mercy does not depend on mundane rules and regulations. He is dependent only on affection and nothing else. Service to Lord Krishna can be rendered in two ways. One can serve the Lord in affection or in veneration. When service is rendered in affection, it is the Lord's special mercy. When service is rendered in veneration, it is doubtful whether Krishna's mercy is actually involved. If Krishna's mercy is there, it is not dependent on any prescribed caste or creed. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to inform Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that Lord Krishna is the spiritual master of everyone, and he does not care for mundane caste or creed. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cited the example of Lord Krishna's accepting food at the house of Vidura, who was a Shudra by birth. By the same token, Ishvara Puri, an empowered spiritual master, could show mercy to anyone. As such, he accepted Govinda, although the boy was born in a Shudra family. When Govinda was initiated, he became a Brahmana and was accepted as Ishvara Puri's personal servant. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Sri Sanatana Goswami stated that one who is initiated by the bona fide spiritual master immediately becomes a Brahmana. A pseudo-spiritual master cannot transform a person into a Brahmana, but an authorized spiritual master can do so. This is the verdict of Shastra, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all the Goswamis. In conclusion, dealings in affection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead bring happiness millions of times greater than dealings with Him in awe and veneration. Simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord, the devotee is merged in transcendental bliss. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Govinda, and Govinda in turn offered his respectful obeisances under Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then continued speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Consider this point. The servant of the spiritual master is always respectable for me. As such, it is not befitting that the Guru's servant should engage in my personal service. Yet my spiritual master has given this order. What shall I do? Purport: a Guru's servants or disciples are all godbrothers to one another, and as such they should all respect one another as Prabhu or master. No one should disrespect his godbrother. For this reason, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya what to do about Govinda. Govinda was the personal servant of Ishvara Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, and now Ishvara Puri had ordered Govinda to become Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal servant. So what was to be done? This was the inquiry Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu placed before Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, an experienced friend. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, the order of the spiritual master is very strong and cannot be disobeyed. That is the injunction of the Shastras, the revealed scriptures. Being ordered by his father, Parashuram killed his mother, Renuka, just as if she were an enemy. When Lakshman, the younger brother of Lord Ramchandra, heard of this, he immediately engaged himself in the service of his elder brother and accepted his orders. The order of the spiritual master must be obeyed without consideration. Purport: this is a quotation from the Raghu Vamsha. Lord Ramachandra's statement to Sita given below is from the Ramayana. Quote, the order of a great personality like a father must be executed without consideration, because there is good fortune in such an order for both of us. In particular, there is good fortune for me. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Govinda and engaged him in the service of his personal body. Everyone respected Govinda as the dearest servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Govinda served all the Vaishnavas and saw to their needs. Both Haridas Sr. and Haridas Jr., who were musicians, as well as Ramai and Nandai, used to stay with Govinda. The next day, Mukunda Datta informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has come to see you. What? I missed a page? Thank you. They all remained with Govinda to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, no one could estimate the good fortune of Govinda. Who stayed with him? Haridas Sr. and Haridas Jr. Ramai Nandai. Hope it was a big place. What? Yeah.
Below, not to what he
Yeah. That's,
maybe a big.
yeah, we heard that. The next day, Mukunda Datta informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has come to see you. Mukunda Datta then asked the Lord, shall I bring him here? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Brahmananda Bharati is like my spiritual master. It is better that I go to him. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees came into the presence of Brahmananda Bharati. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees approached him, they saw that he was covered with a deerskin. Seeing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very unhappy. Purport: Brahmananda Bharati belonged to the Shankar Sampradaya. The title Bharati indicates a member of one of that Sampradaya's 10 classes of sannyasis. It is customary for a person who has renounced the world to cover his body with a deerskin or the bark of a tree. This is enjoined by the Manu Samhita. But if a sannyasi who has renounced the world simply wears a deerskin and does not spiritually advance, he is bewildered by false prestige. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not like to see Brahmananda Bharati wearing a deerskin. Seeing Brahmananda Bharati wearing the deerskin, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pretended not to see him. Instead, he asked Mukunda Datta, where is Brahmananda Bharati, my spiritual master? Mukunda Datta replied, here is Brahmananda Bharati in your presence. The Lord replied, you are incorrect. This is not Brahmananda Bharati. You must be talking of someone else, for this is surely not Brahmananda Bharati. You simply have no knowledge. Why should Brahmananda Bharati wear a deerskin? When Brahmananda Bharati heard this, he thought, my deerskin is not approved by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus admitting his mistake, Brahmananda Bharati thought, he spoke well. I put on this deerskin only for prestige. I cannot cross over the ocean of nescience simply by wearing a deerskin. From today on, I shall not wear this deerskin. As soon as Brahmananda Bharati decided this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding his mind, immediately sent for the robes of a sannyasi. As soon as Brahmananda Bharati gave up his deerskin and covered himself with sannyasi robes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and offered his respects at his lotus feet. Brahmananda Bharati said, you instruct the general populace by your behavior. I will not do anything against your wishes. Otherwise, you will not offer me respects, but will neglect me. I am afraid of this. At the present moment, I see two Brahmans. One Brahman is Lord Jagannatha, who does not move, and the other Brahman who is moving is you. Lord Jagannatha is the Arsha Vigraha, the worshipable deity, and it is he who is the non-moving Brahman. But you are Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you are moving here and there. The two of you are the same Brahman, master of the material world, but you are playing two parts, one moving and one not moving. In this way, two Brahmans are now residing at Jagannath Puri, Purushottam. Of the two Brahmans, you are fair-complexioned, and the other, Lord Jagannath, is blackish. Both of you are delivering the whole world. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, actually, to tell you the truth, due to your presence, there are now two Brahmans at Jagannath Puri. Both Brahmananda and Gaurahari are moving, whereas the blackish Lord Jagannath is sitting tight and immobile. Purport: Brahmananda Bharati wanted to prove that there is no difference between the Supreme Lord and the Jiva, whereas Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to prove that he and Brahmananda Bharati were Jivas, and that although the Jivas are Brahman, they are many, but the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Brahman, is one. On the other hand, Brahmananda Bharati also wanted to prove that Jagannatha and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that to fulfill his mission, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to be moving, whereas Lord Jagannatha appeared to be inert. Thus, this jolly argument was going on. Finally, Brahmananda Bharati referred the whole matter to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for a final decision. Brahmananda Bharati said, "My dear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, please become the mediator in this logical argument between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and me." Brahmananda Bharati continued, "The living entity is localized, whereas the Supreme Brahman is all-pervading. That is the verdict of the revealed scriptures." Brahmananda Bharati drew Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's attention because he wanted him to judge the argument. He then stated that Brahman, the Supreme Lord, is all-pervading. This is confirmed by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetrajnam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra sheknarnayo jnanam yatach jnanam matam mama. O Scion of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his Paramatma feature, is expanded everywhere. The Brahma Samhita says, Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. By virtue of his all-pervasive nature, the Supreme Lord is within the universe as well as within all elements of the universe. He is even within the atom. In this way, the Supreme Lord Govinda is all-pervasive. On the other hand, the living entities are very, very small. It is said that the living entity is 1/10,000th size of the tip of a hair. Therefore, the living entity is localized. Living entities rest on the Brahman effulgence, the bodily rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu purified me by taking away my deerskin. This is proof that he is all-pervasive and all-powerful, and that I am subordinate to him. Brahmananda Bharati herein asserts that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Brahman, and that he is the subordinate Brahman. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanash Chaitananam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Brahman, or Par-Brahman, the chief of all living entities. Both the Supreme Brahman and the Personality of Godhead and the living entities are persons, but the Supreme Brahman is the predominator, whereas the living entities are predominated. His bodily hue is golden, and his whole body is like molten gold. Every part of his body is very beautifully constructed and smeared with sandalwood pulp. Accepting the renounced order, the Lord is always equipoised. He is firmly fixed in his mission of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and he is firmly situated in his dualistic conclusion and in his peace. Purport. This is a quote from Mahabharata, Vishnu Sahasranam Stotram. Suvarna Varna He Mango, Varnangashanjanangadi, Sanyasya Krishma Shanto, Nishtashanti Parayanaha. Om Vishram Vishram Vrisakaro Bhutavavya Bhava Prabhu. All the symptoms mentioned in this verse, from the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra, are visible in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His arms are decorated with sandalwood pulp and the thread received from the Sri Jagannatha deity. And these are his ornamental bangles. After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rendered his judgment, saying, Brahmananda Bharati, I see that you are victorious. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately said, I accept whatever Brahmananda Bharati has said. It is quite all right with me. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus posed himself as a disciple and accepted Brahmananda Bharati as his spiritual master. He then said, the disciple is certainly defeated in an argument with the spiritual master. Brahmananda Bharati immediately countered these words, saying, this is not the cause of your defeat. There is another cause. It is your natural characteristic to accept defeat at the hands of your devotee. This is also another glory of yours, which I ask you to hear attentively. I have been meditating on the impersonal Brahman since my birth, but since I have seen you, I have fully experienced Krishna. Purport. Brahmananda Bharati admitted that when there is an argument between the spiritual master and the disciple, the spiritual master is naturally victorious, although the disciple may put forward a strong argument. In other words, it is customary that the words of the spiritual master are more worshipable than the words of a disciple. Under the circumstances, since Brahmananda Bharati was in the position of a spiritual master, he emerged victorious over Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who considered himself Brahmananda Bharati's disciple. However, Brahmananda Bharati reversed the argument and took the position of a devotee, stating that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This means that the Lord was voluntarily defeated out of affection for his devotee. He was defeated voluntarily because no one can defeat the Supreme Lord. Concerning this, the words of Bhishma in Srimad Bhagavatam are important. Quote, fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran toward me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Krishna promised not to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, but Bhishma, in order to break Krishna's promise, attacked Arjuna in such a vigorous way that Krishna was obliged to take up a chariot wheel and attack Bhishma. The Lord did this to show that his devotee was being maintained at the sacrifice of his own promise. Brahmananda Bharati said, since the beginning of my life, I was attached to impersonal Brahman realization. But as soon as I saw you, I became very much attached to the personality of Godhead Krishna. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself, and thus Brahmananda Bharati became his devotee. We'll take a few reflections or questions. Yes, Yogadish.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There's one excerpt from one of Prabhupada's purports I was hoping you can clarify. This is from when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Mahaprabhu why Ishwar Puri accepted a Shudra as a disciple. And the excerpt goes as follows. Service to Lord Krishna can be rendered in two ways. One can serve the Lord in affection or in veneration. When service is rendered in affection, it is the Lord's special mercy. When service is rendered in veneration, it is doubtful whether Krishna's mercy is actually involved. I was wondering if you can elaborate on what those, on the service in veneration versus affection, and then if it is in veneration, why is it doubtful that Krishna's mercy is actually involved?
Well, as is described by Rupa Goswami, the relationship with the guru-disciple relationship should have both elements. Vishrambra, it means sense of friendship. And then there's reverence also. Pardon me? Huh? Gauravind. And so if one's to take advantage of the position of the spiritual master, then there has to be a sense of reverence because mercy flows down. But at the same time, one may lose the intimate connection of friendship in which the heart of the spiritual master opens and the contents flow out. And so there's an example of fire. Shouldn't get too close to the fire, otherwise you get burned. But if you stay too far away, of course it's not a great example for today, right? Because it's too hot. If you get too close to the fire, you can get burned. But if you stay too far away, you may not be able to take advantage of the qualities of the fire. So an appropriate mix of the two is is there should be an appropriate mix of both of those. And just as far as the second point goes, I mean, it's a generally accepted principle that intimacy in relationships anywhere, but especially with the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a more advanced position. Itam satam brahma sukhanda bhutya dasyam gatanam paradaivatena mayashitana naradarakena sakam vrajaru krita punya punjaha. There's some wonderment in the discovery of those in Vrindavan in this verse I just quoted from the chapter 8 of the 10th canto, that those who are in the topmost position have an equal position with the Lord. They're so intimately related, and that's put in the higher position more mercy than those who are dasyam gatanam paradaivatena. They see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their Master, Supreme Lord, with opulence. And therefore, the second answer to the second question is the one when there is intimacy, then it's known that one's receiving more mercy. But both things should be there in the relationship. That's my final answer. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. It's very instructive and also endearing to see how Lord Chaitanya adjusts Brahmananda Bharati's Vesha by asking a question. Why would Brahmananda Bharati dress like that? That cannot be Brahmananda Bharati. He could have come out and say, what's wrong with your, but because also the etiquette that he goes to see, because he's a godbrother of his guru, to see to see a superior and not to challenge him or criticize him, but to put it in a question that's oftentimes overlooked when people want to voice concerns. So we should follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's methodology and frame it as a question. Then it's not considered inappropriate or breaking etiquette or offensive if one is truly seeking to try to understand this behavior. And it also helps that person maybe to make that adjustment if there is something that needs to be adjusted. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, somewhat appropriately, Brahmananda Prabhu tells a story of when Prabhupada went to visit Lalit Prasad Thakur, who was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's brother. Just about Lalit Prasad Thakur, in that family there were two acharyas. One was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Lalit Prasad Thakur had his own sampradaya, or his own group. And he and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta were at odds because Lalit Prasad Thakur had criticism of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and how he was conducting his completely erroneous obviously, but they were at odds. In any case, I'm just giving a little background on Lalit Prasad Thakur. I have two godbrothers who used to go to visit him because back in the old days, if you could get some kind of sangha with these older, venerable Gaudiya people, acharyas and gurus, there's a lot you could take away, and what they were trying to take away mostly was bhajans, because nobody knew how to sing bhajans anywhere in ISKCON except for Chutananda Swami, because Prabhupada put him in Sridhar Maharaj's mutt, because he had absconded from America to get away from the draft, so there had to be a place to put him. They put him at first he and Hrishikeshananda had been at the ashram of what's his name in Vrindavan? Amhan Maharaj, and that went awry. I won't go into details, but Prabhupada re-stationed Achyutananda at the ashram of Sridhar Maharaj, and he was learning bhajans, and any case, they were going there and sitting with him, listening and stuff like that. And I saw the letter, the original letter from one of my godbrothers that Prabhupada had written him, and he said, Lalit Prasad Thakur is a pure devotee in his own right. But because he has a disagreement with my Guru Maharaj, I asked you not to go and spend time with him. Because by his association, because he's at odds with my spiritual master, then you'll develop a misconception and some doubt. So don't go there anymore. And they abided by that. Prabhupada went to see Lalit Prasad Thakur. There had been some promise that Lalit Prasad Thakur was going to give some donation of land or something, or make some arrangement. But then somehow it didn't work out. He didn't come through. And in the conversation, Brahmananda is describing, because he went with Prabhupada, and so did, I think, Gargamuni. But they went there, and Prabhupada became angry, and he was asking Lalit Prasad Thakur a series of questions. But it was in an angry mood. And afterwards, on the way home, Prabhupada said, I didn't make any statements, I only asked questions. He said, and he mentioned, because he's the godbrother of my spiritual master, so I didn't make any claims, I just asked questions. So that related to that, keeping the etiquette very carefully, being careful. And things like you mentioned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you don't bring him here. He's like my spiritual master, so I go to him. These are what described by Mahaprabhu as the ornament of the Vaishnav, is the etiquette, to follow those types of etiquette. Thank you. Nice points. 1, 2.
Earlier you were envisioning the quality of the katha in the Ishtagosti of all the great devotees. And I've often wondered about the quality of the kirtan that they would perform together. And then when it was mentioned that Swarup Damodar had this book of music, and I know I've seen Narottam Das Thakur's Mridanga notation that has been passed down. I was wondering if the melodies that we've had in the Sampradaya have been passed down in any sort of notation, if maybe the songs of the Acharyas, if those are the melodies that were original or where they came from.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a conversation a while back, but I just revived it recently with one of Indradunda Maharaj's disciples, who's got some family connections to other connections that go back to a time when some people there might remember or know some of the tunes that Narottam Das Thakur made. I found that out once when I met with Indradutta Maharaj, and I was talking to his disciple in California. And it's funny because I just wrote and asked Govinda Charan for his email, and I'm just in the process of, or maybe I already texted him, I can't remember, but wanted to renew the conversation because I wanted to find out the same thing. A lot of the tunes we have are just newly invented. I mean, in the early days, the devotees came up with tunes based on their own musical experience. And some of them were popular, like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That one was, just a concoction. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That one came from Siddha Sarup in Hawaii. So many of them. And then as far as, Bhima Karma, the Madanga player, do you know him? He's a purist when he talks about learning Madanga tals and everything like that. Everyone's concocting everything. It's completely bogus. You have to follow it back. He has the tals that go back in our sampradaya. So there's those kinds of conversations, but not a lot of traceable tunes. But the best of all tunes come from Prabhupada. As one of my godbrothers once put it, everyone else, their kirtans were like a garage band. Prabhupada was like the Beatles. And his tunes, although it'd be interesting to trace back and see where any of them came from, but Prabhupada's tunes were not like anybody else's that we heard, even in the Gaudiya Math. He had totally transcendental tunes. He was so unique in every way. Okay, yes, Prabhu.
Just as a point of information, you very nicely explained about this meeting with Lalit Prasad Thakur. So Jayapataka Maharaj also was personally present. So he
was in on that, right? Okay,
yeah.
Please tell.
So, I mean, nothing more, the same thing. Plus, Prabhupada actually said it, that because I asked questions, it was not offensive.
Yeah.
You know. So, and then, as a point of information, Prabhupada's idea was that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the pioneer of the Krishna consciousness movement. So we should build a big temple for Bhaktivinoda Thakur here and glorify him, so people from around the world can come here, you know, and they can understand the glories of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But now, 6 months ago, we finally acquired several acres of land close to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's birthplace. It's walking distance. They're even trying to buy the land right next to the birthplace, because still they've not been agreeable to give us the land. And the temple project has already begun. The foundation stone laying ceremony was in May of this year.
Thank you. Great news. Haribol. Okay. We're almost over it out, so we'll go from one for the outside people's party.
Hare Krishna. I was reflecting on verse 10:159, the humility of Brahmananda Bharati when he was corrected by Lord Chaitanya when he asked that question, that he didn't argue, he introspected and then he accepted. And I was remembering you mentioned the actual meaning of straw between the mouths when in the previous readings Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami went to Lord Chaitanya with the straw in their mouth, and it means that one just takes it and doesn't argue back, just takes correction. In these days, it's our false ego is very big, that it's very difficult for people to be corrected. And sometimes devotees, they just smile, they don't say anything, just so that the younger devotees may not commit offenses and start talking not in the proper way. So it's an interesting point, that accepting, being humble and accepting correction, it's not as easy.
Yeah, you might also notice in that verse, Prabhupada translates it like this: thus admitting his mistake, Brahmananda Bharati thought, he spoke well, I put on this deerskin only for prestige. I cannot cross over the ocean of nescience simply by wearing a deerskin. In other words, Prabhupada's rendering it, he was thinking, he's processing in his mind. Then, from this day on, I shall not wear this deerskin. As soon as Brahmananda Bharati decided this, Sri Chaitanya Maharaj understood his mind. So, that's also in that pastime with when Govinda had stepped over the body of the Lord to massage him, and then Mahaprabhu woke up and said, what are you still doing here? He said, I can't get out because you're blocking the doorway. And he said, well, how'd you get in? And Govinda didn't answer verbally, he just thought in his mind that to step over you to do my service, it's an offense, but I'll accept that. But I won't accept it to go take prasad for my own sense gratification. But it's indicative of the type of humility that not everything is blurted out. You know, anything that's self-serving is kept within, and you just do your duty. You don't have to say it, which may come out as your own aggrandizement. Okay, that's it for our morning session. We have, yes, Prabhu. Go ahead, one more, last one.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was faced with a dilemma. On one hand, following Ishvara Puri's order to Govinda to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the other hand that you shouldn't accept service from a god brother. And it's quite instructive. The way he resolved the dilemma was to approach Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and in the purport Prabhupada says, who was an experienced friend, so we should try to approach someone who's a friend but is also more experienced than us when we face dilemmas. And also we're told that we should approach Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And it's interesting that when you approach Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who will be a sadhu, then immediately he went to Shastra and he started quoting different verses in order to provide an answer. And so in this way he was able to understand what was the right thing to do.
Fantastic. Nice recount of that pastime, which is extremely sweet on so many levels. All of this is instructive. All of the ways Mahaprabhu is interacting with his devotees, and especially Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he already revealed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu already revealed his godhood to him, and then here's Mahaprabhu asking for advice. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Radhe Shyam, if you so desire, please instill in us the gentleness to accept instruction and follow always the Vaishnava etiquette for the pleasure of your lordships. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Panchakalpadrushcha Kripasinabheva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We'll resume our readings at 3:59 p.m. Yes or yes? Yes. Hare Krishna.